Welcome again to the Captain's Vlog, a podcast by fierceturtle.co.uk. This is episode 5 in series 1, and today I'm going to be continuing with the pros and cons commentary which I've made on each leg of the Clipper Round the World Yacht Race, and the pros and cons to consider when signing up for or when preparing for doing one of those legs as what we call a legger. I should just point out that these are just my experience of the 2011-12 race, and once or twice, certainly with regard to leg 5 and leg 4, my experience as skipper on the 13-14 race. But they are my independent views and are in no way linked to or endorsed by the Clipper race or Clipper Ventures or Clipper Training. So with that sort of disclaimer out of the way, let's get on with this episode. So leg 7, generally it's starting somewhere on the west coast of North America. The last couple of races it started out of Seattle, so you're still quite a long way north early in the spring or late winter, and therefore you can expect some fairly inclement weather for the first week or so, certainly until you're south of San Francisco, I'd say. Obviously it's going to be weather dependent, so you might just be lucky, but it's going to start like that, and leg 7 normally goes around North America and through the Panama Canal, and therefore it's going to get warmer for a large part of the race and lighter airs. You're then going to travel through the Caribbean. All got a pretty good idea the sort of weather you're expecting in the Caribbean, and then from there you're going to go north and up the eastern seaboard. Probably in the past the race has ended up in New York, but of course there's plenty of other venues up the east coast, so it might not be New York, but from New York or from whichever port is the end, you will then have leg 8, which will be the final crossing of the North Atlantic. So weather-wise, might start cold and wet. It's going to get warmer and warmer the further south you go. The breeze will get lighter as you go south. This is all obviously generalities or generalizations. Likely that you're going to be doing quite a lot of downwind lightweight spinnaker work as you approach Panama. You do go through some sort of wind funnels around Mexico, which and sort of South America, where you get some fairly dramatic increases in wind as you drive through them, but obviously you're welcoming that because you're trying to get boat speed. But a lot of the time you're going to find you're back into sort of leg 5 territory, where it's going to be sometimes quite tricky sailing, where efficient spinnaker changes and sail drops and changes is going to be an important part of it. Tactics again, although to some extent that's limited to sort of inshore or offshore and trying to find the breeze and the right wind angle. And then of course you've got the Panama Canal. So the Panama Canal, you clearly can't race through the Panama Canal, so you will all the race is normally split into 2 parts at least, and you will stop and congregate on the west side of the canal, Panama, and then once the boats are together there will be a window where you have a pilot on board who gets on board each boat, and normally in small groups you'll travel through the Panama Canal, which in itself is quite an experience for those that have never done that before, and most people haven't. So you're crossing the link between North and South America. It's amazing that you can go from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean or to the Caribbean in just a few hours of motoring. It's quite a feat of engineering. You're crossing from Panama to the eastern side, the Caribbean side, which is near Colón, which is a port, and there's a marina on that side, which is normally where everybody congregates, and that marina is quite pleasant and has swimming pool and stuff. So if you have time to stop there, which you may or may not, there's a few opportunities for a cold beer and and a swim in the swimming pool, assuming the boats are going to be stopped there for a day or two, which sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't, depends on when everybody gets through for the start of the next race. It's possible that because of the part of the world you're in, the race start will be offshore, so you're going to go out and try and seek some breeze, and therefore from a race start perspective it's likely to be a Le Mans race start, although not necessarily, but it's more than likely, I'd say. And so if having done your level 4 training you like the idea of a Le Mans race start, then this is definitely one where you're likely to see it, so that your skills will come into place and into play. You are then going to cross the Caribbean, which is pretty nice sailing at the best. It's not necessarily, the wind's not necessarily going to be in the right direction for you, because you're travelling sort of eastwards or northeastwards. But if you're lucky, you're going to get a nice reach across the Caribbean and good breeze, and that would be very enjoyable. It's hot down below deck again, and if you're travelling at any speed, and not in a sort of dead light airs where you might risk a hatch opening, you're going to have all your hatches down, and it's going to get very hot. So like leg 5 again, you need to prepare for that. And if you haven't heard what I've said on leg 5 in terms of personal fans and things like that, it might be worth having a listen to that podcast. Once you're through and into the North Atlantic, you're going to be thinking about two things. The first is going to be current, because there's a very strong beneficial current going from south to north inshore, and then you're also going to be thinking about breeze and wanting to get breeze, so you might sometimes be better off going offshore for the breeze. It's going to vary. So tactically, that's another big call. On the 11-12 race, I was on Edinburgh Inspiring Capital, CV1, and we had a very good leg 7 where we took a punt from the back of the fleet and went offshore and jumped almost the entire fleet. So we did pretty well there. We were quite pleased with that. And what have you got to lose at the back? So it's one of the pros is the sailing area. It's very pleasant. The pros is that the race is going to be split into at least 2 races, because you've got pre and post Panama Canal, which gives you another hit at getting a podium position. And you're leaving the west coast of the States, you're going through the Panama Canal, and you're going to end up in the east coast in a significant port of some sort or other. If it's New York, dropping the mainsail and looking across at Manhattan Island and the Statue of Liberty on the opposite side is pretty special. I found that I've always wanted to go to New York, and that was my first time there, so I found that pretty special. And having the opportunity to enjoy a few days in New York was also great. So pros and cons of the race. Again, we found quite an exciting shy kite run up the east coast of the US. So the last 3 days or so we were running a kite constantly, quite shy on the wind, making good progress within sight of most of the rest of the fleet. It was just going into sort of shorts weather at that time, so it was champagne sailing really at its best. Really enjoyed that. And the same on the way down to Panama, although we did sort of start to run out of breeze as you get further south, which is understandable. That's that part of the world. But lots of spinnaker sailing. So if you enjoy sailing with a spinnaker, a lot of light air spinnaker sailing on leg 7 in my experience, and because it's now topped and tailed with further north ports, so certainly Seattle, if Seattle is one of the ports, you are going to see some more robust sailing at the beginning, probably some larger seas and all that sort of stuff. So pros and cons wise, one of the other advantages to leg 7 is that you're getting to see you're introducing new people to the race again. I think I said in the last episode, it's good that leggers get to add some spice in terms of personality, conversation, physical and emotional energy to the boat, which after leg 6 they probably get the round the worlders will probably be pretty tired. So that's great. So as a legger, you really are bringing something to the boat on leg 7. It's like leg 5. It's not going to be largely one of the more challenging legs in terms of big seas, although you could well see some. But it's going to have the same challenges in terms of tactics and sail changes and spinnaker work. So it has its own challenges. It's very warm again, especially if you're waiting around in Panama or Colón. There are some hotels, so if you're waiting around for a couple of days for boats, you can probably go and find some air-conditioned accommodation somewhere if you're prepared to pay for it. And sailing through the Caribbean is well, it's never a hardship, is it? It's always pleasant. Depending on when you cross the Caribbean, there is always the chance, of course, of getting some big tropical storm revolving through there. And of course, as you'd expect, the weather routing and Clipper are looking at that all the time to make sure that the boats are going through there without any major risk of hurricanes, etc. You are crossing that part of the world normally, I would say, in sort of early parts of the hurricane season, so there is a chance you might have the odd hurricane starting to build and come through, although you're probably going to be through just before that happens, and obviously you're going to avoid them if you do end up anywhere near within a few hundred miles of a hurricane. So I think the 13-14 race had quite an exhilarating time through a tropical revolving storm, and most people I spoke to rather enjoyed it. And of course it's warm, which is a big benefit, so you see big winds but also warm sea. And then New York is a great place to finish and have a place to tell stories of your daring do. So leg 7, again a warm leg, probably one of the lesser in terms of big seas and big boat speeds, but still has its own challenges in terms of tactics and crew skills, spinnaker work, etc. And for those of you signing up to leg 7, you're going to enjoy it. It's a really exciting and interesting leg, split into 2 races with the opportunity to see one of the great wonders of the world, the Panama Canal, close up and personal. So I hope that that's of some use to you if you've been listening to this series on the pros and cons of the various legs of the Clipper Around the World yacht race. As I say, these are all personal experiences and personal views, and are not endorsed by or supported by anybody else, including the Clipper Around the World yacht race. And if you are signed up to do the race, or think you're signing up to do the race, I wish you all the best for whichever leg you choose. And next in this podcast series is going to be leg 8, the homecoming leg, sometimes known as the glory leg. And then I will be doing a short blog later on those of you that have signed up to do the whole races around the world crew, and some of the advantages, disadvantages. Well, very few disadvantages other than your bank account, but I'll be going through that in some detail as well as at the end of this series of podcasts. So thanks again for listening. If you'd like to comment or add your own advice, please do so either on the podcast Anchor FM app, or alternatively through the YouTube channel, First Turtle YouTube channel, in the comments section. I may or may not have put some useful links in the description box, so by all means search through there and see if there's any links. From time to time I'll add an affiliate link there as well, so if there's something there that you think you might want to buy and you click on it, takes you to Amazon, I might get a few pence and commission from that. Doesn't cost you any more, but it also helps to pay for the cost of the podcast, etc. So thanks again for listening, and hope to be able to share my experiences with you again in the near future. Thanks again. Bye.